Before we unravel this web of deception and survival, if you enjoy stories that keep you on the edge of your seat while teaching you real-world tactical awareness, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. It helps us bring more of these narratives to life. The rain in Seattle didn't wash things clean. It just made the grime slicker. Elias Thorne sat in the back booth of the Midnight Grind, a diner that smelled perpetually of burnt bacon and floor wax. To the average patron, Elias was invisible. He wore a faded gray canvas jacket, nondescript jeans, and a baseball cap with no logo. He was the embodiment of the gray man theory, a concept he had mastered during 12 years in the Navy SEAL teams. The goal wasn't to hide. It was to blend, to be so unremarkably average that the human eye glossed over him like furniture. But while Elias looked like he was staring into his black coffee, he was working. He was always working. His eyes flicked up every 6 seconds, scanning the environment in a Z pattern. Left to right, foreground to background. This wasn't paranoia. It was a conditioned response, a neurological pathway burned into his brain through years of survival. He was operating in condition yellow. For those unfamiliar with tactical psychology, Jeff Cooper's color code is the Bible of situational awareness. Most people live in condition white, unaware, distracted by their phones, oblivious to their surroundings. They are sheep grazing with their heads down. Elias lived in condition yellow, relaxed alert. No specific threat, but total awareness that the world is a hazardous place. "Refill, hun?" The voice broke his scan. It was Sarah. She was in her late 20s with tired eyes and a uniform that had seen better days. Sarah had been serving Elias his Tuesday night coffee for 6 months. They had never exchanged more than 20 words at a time, but a silent rapport existed between them. She knew he tipped 40% every time. He knew she was a single mother working double shifts because he'd heard her on the phone with a babysitter once, negotiating overtime pay. "Please," Elias said, sliding his mug to the edge of the table. As she poured, Elias noticed her hand. It was trembling. Just a fraction of a millimeter, a micro-tremor that caused the stream of dark liquid to waver. Elias didn't react externally, but internally he shifted gears. He moved from condition yellow to condition orange. A specific anomaly had been detected. Why was she shaking? "Rough night?" Elias asked softly. His voice was gravelly, unused to long conversations. Sarah froze. She didn't look at him. She looked at the door. Just tired. Double shift again. It was a lie. Elias knew the physiology of a lie. The carotid artery in her neck was pulsing visibly. Her pupils were dilated despite the bright fluorescent lights of the diner. She was in a state of acute sympathetic nervous system arousal, fight or flight. "Take your time," Elias said, locking eyes with her for a brief second. "I'm not in a rush." She nodded too quickly and hurried away, clutching the coffee pot like a lifeline. Elias took a sip, but the taste didn't register. His mind began to dismantle the room. He needed to establish a baseline. A baseline is what a specific environment looks like when everything is normal. In the Midnight Grind, the baseline was soft classic rock on the radio, the cook humming off-key, 2 truckers eating pie at the counter, and the hum of the refrigerator. He scanned the room again. The truckers were eating. Normal. The cook was scraping the grill. Normal. The couple in the far booth. Elias paused. They were a young couple, holding hands over a milkshake. But they weren't talking. They weren't looking at each other. The man was looking at the reflection in the diner window, which gave him a view of the parking lot. The woman was scrolling on her phone, but her thumb wasn't moving. She was watching the screen, but the screen was dark, mirroring, surveillance. Elias felt a cold prickle at the base of his spine. He wasn't the target of a mugging. This was professional. The couple was boxing the room, controlling the visual lines of sight. He looked out the window. His truck, a sturdy, older model pickup, was parked under the lone street lamp. It was the only vehicle in that row. Elias had retired 3 years ago. He worked now as a security consultant for high-net-worth logistics firms. He audited supply chains for weaknesses. It was boring, lucrative, and safe. Or so he thought. He ran through his current contracts. Had he flagged something he shouldn't have? Last week he had found a discrepancy in a shipping manifest for a pharmaceutical company, a ghost shipment of chemicals that didn't exist on the inventory. He had reported it to the board of directors yesterday. Cause and effect, Elias thought. Newton's third law applied to corporate espionage. He checked his watch. 9:14 p.m. He usually left at 9:15 p.m. exactly. Being predictable was a sin in the field, but a comfort in civilian life. A comfort that had just become a liability. Elias reached into his pocket and fingered the keys to his truck. He needed to leave. He needed to isolate the variable. If the couple followed him, he would know. He placed a $20 bill on the table, enough to cover the coffee and a generous tip. He stood up. The moment he stood, the man in the far booth tensed. His shoulder dipped slightly. He was tapping his leg. A signal? Or preparation to move? Elias walked toward the register. He moved with a deceptive slouch, hiding his size and agility. He kept his hands open, empty, but ready. Sarah was behind the counter. She was wiping the surface with a rag, but she was just pushing dirt around in circles. She looked up, and her face was pale. "Have a good night, Sarah," Elias said. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Her eyes darted to the couple in the booth, then back to Elias. It was a look of pure terror. "You too," she whispered. It sounded like an apology. Elias pushed the door open. The bell chimed, a cheerful sound that felt grotesquely out of place. He stepped out into the cool, damp air. The parking lot was quiet, too quiet. No crickets, no distant traffic, just the hum of the transformer on the pole. He walked toward his truck. Step 1 of the OODA loop, observe. He saw his truck. It looked untouched, no broken glass, no flat tires. He saw a dark sedan parked in the shadows of the adjacent building, 50 yards away. Engine off but heat shimmering from the hood. It had arrived recently. Step 2, orient. The couple inside. The nervous waitress. The dark sedan. The ghost shipment he had reported. Conclusion. He was about to be snatched. They wouldn't kill him here. Too public. They wanted to take him. They needed to know who else knew about the manifest. Elias reached his truck. He put the key in the lock. That was when the diner door banged open. Elias didn't flinch. He didn't spin around in a panic. He turned his head slowly, keeping his body bladed toward the threat, his hand dropping casually near his waistline. It was Sarah. She had burst out of the diner, her apron flapping in the wind. She wasn't running to him. She was running at him. "Mr. Thorne!" she screamed. The couple inside the diner was scrambling out of the booth now. Elias saw them through the glass. The man was reaching into his jacket. "Sarah, get back inside," Elias commanded. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried the weight of absolute authority. It was a command voice, pitched to cut through panic. She ignored him. She reached him, breathless, her eyes wide and wet. She grabbed his arm, the arm holding the key. "Don't get in," she gasped, her nails digging into his jacket. "Please don't get in." Elias looked at her, then at the truck, then at the couple exiting the diner, then at the sedan in the shadows where the doors were starting to open. "Why?" Elias asked. He didn't pull away. He needed the intel. They did something," Sarah stammered. "2 men, before you came in. They were in the lot. They were under your truck. They told me if I said anything, they'd find my son. They knew his school, Elias. They knew his teacher's name." Tears spilled over her cheeks. She was shaking violently now. She had broken the coercion. She had chosen her conscience over her fear, a gamble that could cost her everything. "They said they just put a tracker on it," she sobbed. "But I saw them messing with the wires under the steering column. They broke in, Elias. It took them 10 seconds. Wires under the steering column. That wasn't a tracker. A tracker goes in the wheel well or under the bumper. Wires under the column meant ignition sabotage. A remote kill switch? Or an airbag rig to knock him unconscious? No. If they wanted to kidnap him, they would disable the vehicle remotely once he was on the highway, in a kill box of their choosing. But Sarah had changed the equation. The couple from the diner was outside now. The man, wearing a leather jacket, held up a hand. "Hey, everything okay over there?" It was a probe. They were checking if the waitress had blown the operation. Elias looked at the sedan. 3 men were stepping out. They wore tactical pants and hoodies. They moved with purpose. They were closing the distance. Elias made a split-second calculation. If he got in the truck, he was trapped. If the truck was rigged to stall, he was a sitting duck. If he stayed here, in the open parking lot, he was outnumbered 5-1. He looked at Sarah. She was the liability, but she was also the savior. He couldn't leave her. The moment they realized she had talked, she was a loose end. "Sarah," Elias said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Do you have your car keys?" She nodded dumbly. "My Honda, it's round the back." "Listen to me. We are going to walk to the back of the diner. We are not going to run. Running triggers a predator's chase instinct. We are going to walk." "They're coming," she whimpered. "I know." Elias turned to the man in the leather jacket. He raised his hand in a friendly wave, masking the tension. "Just a spilled drink. She's helping me clean it up." The lie bought them 2 seconds. The man hesitated, looking back at his partner. "Move," Elias whispered. He guided Sarah around the front of his truck, putting the engine block between them and the shooters. As soon as they broke the line of sight, Elias grabbed her arm. "Now we run." They bolted toward the alleyway behind the diner. Behind them, the facade of politeness dropped. "Secure the target! Go! Go!" A voice roared. The heavy thud of combat boots hit the pavement. Elias scanned the alley, dumpsters, grease traps, a narrow passage leading to the employee lot. Sarah fumbled for her keys. I can't find them." Panic-induced motor skill degradation. When the heart rate goes above 145 beats per minute, fine motor skills, like finding a key in a messy pocket, evaporate. "Breathe," Elias said. He stopped at the corner of the building. He checked behind. The 3 men from the sedan were rounding the truck. They had weapons drawn now, suppressed pistols. This wasn't a police arrest. This was a wet work team. "Got them," Sarah cried, holding up a key fob. Her car, a beat-up silver Civic, was 10 yards away. "Get to the passenger side," Elias ordered. "I'm driving." "But I'm driving." They sprinted. Elias shoved Sarah toward the passenger door and vaulted over the hood to the driver's side. He didn't wait for the door to close. He jammed the key into the ignition. The engine sputtered. The starter, Elias thought. Of course. "Come on," he growled. The engine roared to life just as the first bullet shattered the rear windshield. Glass rained down on the back seat. Sarah screamed, curling into a ball in the footwell. "Stay down!" Elias shouted. He threw the gear shift into reverse. He didn't look over his shoulder. He used the side mirrors. He slammed on the gas. The Honda shot backward, tires screeching. He aimed for the alley entrance. 2 of the men were blocking it. Most drivers would brake. They would swerve. It is unnatural for a human being to drive a vehicle toward another human being. It violates social conditioning. Elias didn't brake. He accelerated. The men realized too late that he wasn't playing by the rules of civilized engagement. They dove to the sides, rolling into the garbage cans. Elias spun the wheel, whipping the car around in a J-turn, a maneuver that swung the nose of the car 180 degrees while maintaining momentum. He shifted into drive and floored it. They burst out of the back lot onto the main road. "Are you hit?" Elias asked, his eyes scanning the mirrors. "No, I don't think so," Sarah sobbed. "My God, they shot at us." "Who are they?" "Contractors," Elias said grimly. "Private sector, expensive ones." He checked the rearview mirror. The dark sedan was peeling out of the diner parking lot. It was a BMW M5, fast, heavy, and likely armored. Sarah's Honda Civic had 140 horsepower on a good day. In a straight race, they were dead. "We can't outrun them," Elias said, his mind racing through the local geography. "Call the police," Sarah yelled, reaching for her phone. "No!" Elias snatched the phone from her hand and rolled down the window. "What are you doing?" "They tracked me. They knew where I was. That means my phone is compromised." Probably yours too if they were close enough to clone the signal. He threw her phone out the window. It clattered onto the wet asphalt at 40 miles per hour. He tossed his own phone right after it. "That was an iPhone," Sarah protested, hysteria bubbling in her voice. "That was a homing beacon," Elias corrected. "Now we're dark." He took a hard right turn, tires squealing, entering a residential zone. "Where are we going?" Sarah asked. She was sitting up now, trembling, looking at the shattered back window. "We need to break visual contact," Elias explained. "Then we ditch the car." "Ditch my car? Elias, I can't afford." "Sarah," he said, his voice calm but intense. "Your life is worth more than a Honda. They have your plate number. In 10 minutes, every corrupt cop and private contractor in the city will be looking for this car." He checked the mirror. The BMW was 3 blocks back, gaining fast. Its headlights were blindingly bright, cutting through the rain. Elias needed a force multiplier. He needed to use the environment against them. They were approaching the industrial district, a maze of warehouses, train tracks, and narrow overpasses. This was Elias's terrain. "Hold on," he said. He saw what he was looking for, a level crossing for the freight trains. The warning lights were flashing red. The barrier was coming down. A massive freight train was rumbling in the distance, a dark behemoth of steel. "Elias, the train!" Sarah screamed. "I see it. The barrier is down. I see it." He didn't slow down. He estimated the speed of the train. He estimated the distance to the crossing. It was a geometry problem of life and death. If he braked, the BMW would catch them. If he crossed, he might get hit. But if he crossed just before the train— "Get your head down!" Elias gunned the engine. The Honda whined in protest. He aimed for the center of the barrier arm. Crash! The windshield spiderwebbed as the wooden barrier shattered against the hood. The car bucked, hitting the tracks. The horn of the train blasted. A deafening, earth-shaking roar. The Honda bounced over the first rail, then the second. The headlights of the locomotive filled the side window, a blinding wall of light. They cleared the tracks. Elias slammed on the brakes and spun the car into a drift, sliding behind a concrete piling on the other side. Whoosh. The freight train thundered past, a blurred wall of graffiti and steel, moving at 50 miles per hour. It cut the world in two. On the other side of the tracks, the BMW screeched to a halt. The mercenaries were cut off. They could only watch the endless line of boxcars roll by. Elias exhaled, a long, slow breath. He turned to Sarah. She was hyperventilating, her hands clutching the dashboard. "You're okay," he said. "Check yourself. Are you hurt?" She patted her chest, her arms. I'm okay." "Good." Elias put the car in gear and drove slowly into the darkness of the industrial park. Now the real work begins. "We have about 20 minutes before they find a way around those tracks." "What work?" Sarah asked, her voice small. "We need to disappear," Elias said. "And then we need to find out why they are willing to kill for a shipping manifest." He looked at her. "You saved my life back there, Sarah. I won't let anything happen to you, but you need to trust me. Can you do that?" Sarah looked at the ex-SEAL, saw the calm focus in his eyes, and realized she had crossed a threshold. Her old life, the diner, the double shifts, the routine, was gone. "I trust you," she whispered. "Good. First lesson of survival," Elias said, turning into a derelict warehouse complex. "If you can't be strong, be invisible." The Honda Civic limped through the industrial district, its suspension groaning with every pothole. The adrenaline that had fueled their escape across the train tracks was beginning to fade, replaced by the cold, shaking reality of shock. Elias glanced at Sarah. She was staring at her hands, her breathing shallow and rapid. She was entering the gray zone, that mental fog where trauma disconnects the brain from the body. "Sarah," Elias said, his voice firm but calm. "Tactical breathing. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, do it with me," he demonstrated, exaggerating the breath. "In, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, out." She struggled at first, her chest hitching, but the rhythmic command gave her brain a task to focus on. Slowly, her breathing synced with his. "We need to ditch this car," Elias stated, scanning the dark streets. It's a rolling beacon, broken window, bullet holes in the trunk registered to you. The police scanners will pick it up within 10 minutes, and the people hunting us have access to those feeds. But how? Sarah asked, her voice trembling. We're in the middle of nowhere. We need a crowded place to hide, Elias corrected. In covert operations, you don't hide in the dark. You hide in the noise. He steered the car toward the glowing lights of a 24-hour hospital complex looming on the horizon. Hospitals were perfect for vehicle abandonment. They were chaotic, transient spaces with massive parking structures where cars sat for days without raising suspicion. Elias pulled into the multi-story garage, bypassing the main entrance cameras by tucking closely behind a delivery van. He drove to the 4th floor, high enough to be away from foot patrols, low enough to exit quickly via the stairs. He backed the car into a dark corner spot against a wall. Gloves, Elias said. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a pair of black nitrile gloves, standard issue for his line of work. He handed a spare pair to Sarah. Put these on. Don't touch anything without them. Are we wiping it down? No time. We're sanitizing the obvious. Elias moved with efficient speed. He grabbed the registration from the glove box, the insurance papers, and a stray receipt on the dashboard. He checked under the seats. Personal items define you. Remove them, and you become a ghost. He grabbed a gym bag from the back seat, Sarah's change of clothes for her son. Is this everything? He asked. My purse. It's under the seat. He grabbed it. Let's move. Walk, don't run. Look like you belong here. You're just a tired nurse going home, or a worried relative arriving late. They exited the stairwell, merging with the flow of people in the hospital lobby. The sterile smell of antiseptic hit them. Elias guided her toward the gift shop, stopping near a row of vending machines. He needed to change her silhouette. Take off the apron, he whispered. Put on that hoodie from your gym bag. Put your hair up. Change your gait. Stand taller. While she changed, Elias observed the room. Security guards were posted at the ER entrance, bored, looking at their phones. We need a new ride, Elias murmured. Stealing one? Sarah whispered, pulling a gray hoodie over her uniform. Borrowing. Indefinitely. Elias shook his head. No. Grand theft auto triggers an immediate police response. We need something untraceable. He led her out the side exit toward the taxi stand. But they didn't take a taxi. Taxis have GPS. Uber and Lyft require apps that track location. Elias spotted a beat-up shuttle bus for a nearby airport hotel. The driver was outside, smoking a cigarette. Change of plans, Elias said. We take the shuttle to the airport. From the airport, we take the light rail into the city center. We loop our trail. Why the airport? Because airports are the busiest places on Earth. Thousands of faces, thousands of bags. It washes away our trail. It's called cleaning the tail. By the time they figure out where we went, we'll be 3 steps ahead. They boarded the shuttle. Elias sat in the back, pulling his cap low. Sarah sat next to him, gripping her purse until her knuckles turned white. My son, she whispered, the reality crashing down on her again. You said they knew his school. Elias turned to her. His eyes were hard, devoid of false comfort. What is his name? Leo. He's 6. He's with my mom right now. Does your mom live at the address on your driver's license? Sarah shook her head. No. She's in an apartment complex in West Seattle. Different last name. Good. That buys us time. They assume a pattern. They will hit your house first. Elias leaned in close. We are going to get Leo. But first we need tools. I'm naked out here without my gear. An hour later, they were in a gritty part of the city, standing in front of a rows of rusted orange doors. You store it self-storage. It was 11 p.m. The gate was locked, but Elias punched a code into the keypad. Not his code, a code he had memorized from a previous audit of the facility's security flaws. You live in a storage unit? Sarah asked, looking around nervously at the flickering lights. I keep insurance here, Elias replied. He led her to Unit 404. He didn't use a key. He reached up to the top of the door frame and felt for a magnetic key box hidden in the structural lip of the steel beam. He opened the padlock and rolled the door up. Inside, it wasn't a dusty collection of old furniture. It was a climate-controlled operational hub. Along one wall were racks of hard cases. A workbench held 3 monitors, currently dark. There was a cot, a mini-fridge, and a row of lockers. Elias hit a switch, and a low red light bathed the room. "Red light preserves night vision," he explained automatically. "Come in. Close the door." Sarah stepped inside, her eyes adjusting to the crimson gloom. "Who are you, Elias?" "I was a Tier 1 operator for the Navy," Elias said, walking to a locker and spinning the combination dial. "Then I was a private contractor. Now, I'm the guy who found something he wasn't supposed to." He opened the locker and began to strip off his jacket. He pulled on a tactical vest, low profile, designed to be worn under a loose shirt. He slotted a ceramic plate into the chest pouch. "The people chasing us," Elias continued, "work for a company called Aegis Logistics. On the surface, they move freight, pharmaceuticals, aid supplies, tech. But last week I found a discrepancy in their data stream." He pulled a laptop from a waterproof case and booted it up. "They aren't just moving legal goods. They're moving dual-use precursors." "Precursors?" Sarah asked. She had sat down on the cot, watching him with a mix of fear and fascination. "Chemicals that are legal in isolation," Elias explained, typing furiously. "But when you combine shipment A with shipment B, you get a nerve agent. Highly illegal, highly profitable for rogue states. I flagged the ghost shipment. I thought it was an error. Turns out it was their business model." The screen flared to life. Elias brought up a map of the city. "Okay," he said, "we need to secure Leo, but we can't just drive up to your mom's house. If they are watching me, they are watching everyone connected to you." He turned to Sarah. "I need you to call your mom, but not from a phone." He handed her a small black device. It looked like a walkie-talkie, but sleeker. "This is an encrypted satellite link. It bounces the signal off 3 different continents before connecting. It cannot be triangulated by local towers. Call her. Tell her to pack a bag for Leo. Tell her do not open the door to anyone but me." Sarah took the device, her hands shaking. "What if they are already there?" "Then we go to war," Elias said simply. "But they shouldn't be. They are still looking for the Honda." Sarah dialed the number. Elias watched her face. He saw the moment her mother answered, the relief, then the rising panic as Sarah explained. "Mom, listen to me," Sarah said, her voice finding a sudden steeliness. "Just do it. Pack the bag, turn off the lights, go to the bathroom in the center of the apartment and wait." She handed the device back to Elias. "She's doing it." "Good." Elias turned back to the locker. He pulled out a dark duffel bag and tossed it to her. "Inside is a ballistic jacket. It looks like a normal windbreaker, but it will stop a 9mm round. Put it on." He then reached for a pistol in a holster, a Sig Sauer P226. He checked the chamber, performed a press check, and holstered it at his hip. He grabbed a second weapon, a compact carbine, and slung it on a single-point sling, hiding it under a long trench coat. "We are leaving," Elias said. "To my mom's?" "Yes. But we aren't taking the shuttle this time." Elias threw a set of keys to Sarah. "You know how to drive a stick shift?" "My first car was a stick." "Good." Elias pointed to the back of the storage unit. There was a tarp covering a shape. He pulled it back to reveal a vintage beat-up Ford F-150 from the 90s. "No electronics," Elias said, patting the hood. "No GPS, no OnStar, no computer chips that can be hacked remotely, just steel and gas." He opened the roll-up door of the unit. "This is the dangerous part, Sarah. This is the fatal funnel, transitioning from a secure space to an unsecured one." He looked at her. "You are part of the team now. Keep your eyes moving. If you see something that doesn't look right, a car parked too long, a person standing too still, you call it out. Don't second-guess yourself. Trust your gut. It's millions of years of evolution trying to save your life." Sarah zipped up the ballistic jacket. It was heavy, comforting. She looked at Elias. "I'm ready." The F-150 rumbled out of the storage facility. The rain had intensified, turning the streets into rivers of black oil. Elias drove. He took a circuitous route, avoiding major intersections and traffic cameras. He navigated by memory, sticking to the residential side streets. "We are entering the red zone," Elias said as they approached the West Seattle district. "This is where the threat is highest." He killed the headlights as they turned onto her mother's street. He let the truck coast, the engine idling low. "Which building?" "The brick one on the left." "Apartment 2B, Sarah whispered. Elias scanned the street. Step 1, observe. Street lights were on. Most cars were parked tight against the curb. But there was a van. A white plumbing van parked across the street from the apartment complex. "Does your mom have plumbing issues?" Elias asked. "I don't know, maybe." "At midnight on a Tuesday?" Elias stopped the truck a block away. He brought up a pair of thermal binoculars from the center console. He focused on the van. Through the green phosphor display, the van glowed. The engine block was hot, and in the back, there were 2 heat signatures. 2 people sitting in the cargo area. "Static surveillance," Elias murmured. "They beat us here." Sarah gasped. "They have Leo?" "No," Elias said, analyzing the heat signatures. "They are waiting. If they had him, they would be gone. They are waiting for you to come get him." He lowered the binoculars. "They are using your son as bait, Sarah." A cold rage settled over Elias. It was a familiar feeling, a focused anger that sharpened his senses. Using children as leverage was a violation of every code of warfare he respected. "What do we do?" Sarah asked, tears welling up. "We can't leave him." "We aren't leaving him." Elias reached into the back seat and grabbed a small, dense canister, a flashbang grenade. "But we can't walk in the front door. That's the kill zone." He looked at the apartment building. "Is there a fire escape?" "In the back. It leads to the kitchen window." "Okay, here's the plan. I'm going to draw their attention. I'm going to make them look at me. While they are looking at me, you are going to go up that fire escape and get your family. You're going to fight them?" "I'm going to distract them," Elias said. "Violence of action. It means overwhelming the enemy with speed and aggression before they can process what is happening." He looked at Sarah. "Can you climb that fire escape? Can you carry Leo down?" "I'll carry him down if my legs break," she said fiercely. "That's the spirit." Elias handed her a small glass breaking tool. "If the window is locked, press this against the corner of the glass. It will shatter quietly. Get in, get them low, wait for my signal." "What's the signal?" "You'll know it when you hear it." Sarah opened the door and slipped into the shadows. Elias watched her move. She was learning fast, staying low, using the parked cars as cover. He waited until she disappeared around the back of the building. Then, Elias put the truck in gear. He turned on the headlights, the high beams. He revved the engine. He drove straight toward the white plumbing van. He wasn't going to ram it. He was going to execute a blocking maneuver. He pulled the truck diagonally across the street, blocking the van's view of the apartment entrance and boxing them in against the curb. Elias honked the horn, a long, sustained blast. The back doors of the van flew open. 2 men in tactical gear jumped out, weapons raised. "Police!" one shouted. A lie. They wore no badges, just black Velcro patches. Elias didn't get out. He rolled down the window an inch and shouted, "Hey, you're blocking my driveway." It was absurd. It was confusing. It forced the mercenaries to pause and process the data. Is this a hostile or just an angry neighbor? That pause was all Elias needed. He pulled the pin on the flashbang, held the spoon for a split second, and tossed it out the window, rolling it under the van. "Get down," he muttered to himself, ducking below the dashboard. Boom. The street lit up with a blinding magnesium white light, followed by a thunderclap that set off every car alarm on the block. The mercenaries staggered back, blinded and deafened. Elias popped up, leveled his carbine through the windshield, and fired 3 controlled shots into the engine block of the van. He wasn't shooting to kill. He was shooting to disable their mobility. The van's radiator hissed, steam erupting into the night. "Go, Sarah, go!" Elias yelled, though she couldn't hear him. From the back of the building, Sarah was already moving. She had Leo in her arms, her mother trailing behind her. They were scrambling down the metal stairs. Elias saw the mercenaries recovering. One was raising a rifle. Elias switched targets. He fired a round into the pavement near the mercenary's feet, suppressive fire. The man dove for cover behind the van. Elias threw the truck into reverse, tires smoking, and spun around to the alley entrance. "Get in!" he roared. Sarah burst out of the alley, clutching Leo. Her mother, a stout woman in a floral nightgown, was right behind her. They dove into the back seat of the F-150. "Down! Everybody down!" Elias slammed on the gas. Bullets pinged off the tailgate as they sped away, disappearing into the labyrinth of suburban streets. "Is he okay?" Elias shouted over the roar of the engine. Sarah was hugging the boy so tight he squeaked, "He's okay! We're all okay!" Elias checked the rearview mirror. No headlights following. They had won the skirmish. But as he drove, Elias knew the war had just escalated. They had attacked a surveillance team. The company, Aegis Logistics, would now take the gloves off. He looked at the boy in the rearview mirror. Leo was wide-eyed, clutching a stuffed dinosaur. "Sarah," Elias said quietly, "check the bag your mom packed. Check everything. Check the dinosaur." "Why?" "Because," Elias said, turning onto the highway ramp, heading out of the city. "If they were in that van for more than an hour, they might have planted something on the kid." Sarah froze. She began to pat down the boy's pajamas. She checked the bag. Then she squeezed the stuffed dinosaur. She felt something hard inside the stuffing. She looked at Elias, her face pale. "There's something inside Rex," she whispered. "Don't throw it out," Elias commanded instantly. "If the signal stops moving, they know we found it. We're going to use it to lead them exactly where we want them to go." Elias Thorne smiled grimly. Now he was the one setting the trap. The F-150 roared eastbound on Interstate 90, climbing toward the Snoqualmie Pass. The city lights of Seattle faded into a dull orange glow in the rearview mirror, replaced by the encroaching darkness of the Cascade Mountains. Inside the cab, the atmosphere was thick with tension and the smell of old upholstery and nervous sweat. "Keep the dinosaur near the window," Elias instructed, his eyes flicking between the road and the mirrors. "But don't hold it. Put it on the dashboard. The signal needs a clear path to the sky." Sarah placed the stuffed T-Rex on the dash. It looked absurd. A bright green toy staring out at the rain-slicked highway, carrying a death sentence in its belly. "Where are we taking them?" Sarah asked. Her voice was steady now. The shock had burned off, replaced by a cold resolve. This is a phenomenon known as post-traumatic growth, where individuals in high-stress situations adapt rapidly to survive. "We're going to a place called Echo Ridge," Elias said. "It's an old logging site about 40 miles off the main highway. It's abandoned, geographically isolated, and has only one road in and out. You want to trap yourself?" Martha, Sarah's mother, spoke up from the back seat. She was clutching Leo, rocking him gently. She was terrified, but she was a mother, which meant her protective instinct outweighed her fear. "I want to channel them," Elias corrected. "In tactical terms, it's called a choke point. Right now on the highway, they have multiple lanes, exits, and civilian cover. If they attack us here, people die. Collateral damage creates chaos, and chaos favors the aggressor." He downshifted as the incline steepened. "At Echo Ridge, I control the terrain. I decide where they step. I decide what they see." "How do you know they'll follow?" Sarah asked. Elias pointed at the dinosaur. "Because of the Judas signal. The tracker is likely a military-grade transponder. It gives them our location within 3 meters. They think we're ignorant. They think we're fleeing in panic. A panicked enemy is predictable. They will follow the dot on the screen right into the mouth of the wolf." Leo stirred in the back. "Mom, is Rexy sick?" Sarah reached back and squeezed his hand. "No, baby. Rexy is on a secret mission. He's helping Mr. Elias. He's a soldier dinosaur," Elias added, glancing in the mirror. "And he's the bravest one here." Elias needed to prepare them. He couldn't fight a squad of mercenaries alone while babysitting 3 civilians. He needed to turn them into assets. Sarah, Elias said, open the glove box, take out the map. She unfolded a laminated topographic map of the region. Find Sector 4. Look for the elevation lines that are close together. I see them, she said, tracing the lines with her finger. It's steep. That's a cliff face, Elias explained. The road winds around it. That is our fatal funnel. I need you to navigate. I'm going to kill the lights soon to avoid aerial surveillance if they have a drone up. You are my eyes. You're turning off the headlights on a mountain road? We have to. If they have thermal optics, lights don't matter. But if they are using night vision, headlights will bloom out their sensors. It's a game of cat and mouse. I need you to call out the turns. Can you do that? Sarah looked at the winding line on the paper. She took a deep breath. Left in 0.5 miles. Sharp curve. Good. Keep talking. Elias reached down and flipped a switch he had installed under the dash. The truck went dark. The dashboard lights died. The headlights cut out. The world outside vanished, replaced by a wall of black rain. Turn coming up, Sarah cried out, her voice pitching up. Elias cranked the wheel, feeling the tires bite into the gravel shoulder. The truck drifted, the back end sliding toward the guardrail and the 1,000-foot drop beyond. He corrected, feathering the throttle. They made the turn. For the next hour they drove in darkness, guided only by Sarah's voice and Elias's heightened spatial awareness. This was the trust exercise to end all trust exercises. They arrived at the logging camp just as the rain began to turn to sleet. The air was biting cold. The camp was a graveyard of rusted machinery. Massive yellow loaders sat silent in the overgrown grass. A few dilapidated cabins stood near the tree line. Out, Elias ordered. Move fast. He grabbed the dinosaur from the dashboard. We have maybe 20 minutes before they catch up, Elias said. The signal updates every few minutes. They know we stopped. He led them toward the largest cabin. It was sturdy, built of heavy logs, with a single door and shuttered windows. Martha, take Leo inside, Elias commanded. Go to the back room. Put mattresses against the walls. That's your bunker. Do not come out unless I say the code word. What's the code word? Martha asked, shivering. Sunrise. Martha nodded, scooped up Leo and ran inside. Elias turned to Sarah. He handed her the thermal binoculars. We need to analyze the terrain. This is the OCOCA principle. It stands for observation, cover, obstacles, key terrain, and avenues of approach. Memorize it. He pointed down the muddy logging road they had just driven up. Observation and fields of fire. From here, we can see the road for 300 yards. They can't see us until they round that bend. He pointed to the rusted heavy machinery scattered around the yard. Cover and concealment. Those machines are bulletproof. The trees are not. If the shooting starts, you get behind steel, not wood. He pointed to the muddy slope leading up to the cabin. Obstacles. The mud is deep. Their vehicles will struggle. They will have to dismount and walk. That slows them down. He stomped his boot on the porch. Key terrain. This cabin is the high ground. Whoever holds the high ground dictates the battle. And the avenue of approach? Sarah asked, catching on. There's only one, Elias said grimly, looking at the road. And we're going to make it very unappealing. He held up the stuffed dinosaur. I need to place the bait. Elias ran to one of the rusted bulldozers parked about 50 yards away from the cabin, near the center of the clearing. He wedged the dinosaur into the gap between the cabin and the engine block. Why there? Sarah asked when he returned. Because it forces them into the open, Elias explained. They will track the signal to the dozer. They will approach it to confirm the target. When they do, they will be standing in the middle of a spotlight with no cover. We don't have a spotlight, Sarah noted. Elias smiled, a tight, dangerous expression. I have something better. I have magnesium flares. He opened his duffel bag and pulled out 4 road flares and a spool of fishing line. Tripwires, he said. We are going to rig the perimeter. Not with explosives, I don't have claymores, but with light. When they trip the wire, the flare ignites. It blinds them and illuminates them for me. What do I do? Sarah asked. She felt useless standing there in the cold. Elias reached into his belt and pulled out his secondary weapon, the Sig Sauer pistol. Do you know how to use this? I've shot a revolver once, at a range. Safety is off, it's double action, just pull the trigger. Do not point it at anything you are not willing to destroy. He pressed it into her hand. It was heavy, cold, and real. You are the last line of defense for your son. If they get past me, if they get into the cabin, you empty this magazine. Do you understand? Sarah looked at the gun, then at the door where her son was hiding. Her fear hardened into a primal protectiveness. I understand. Good. Get inside, watch the windows, stay low. Elias turned back to the darkness. He had work to do. He moved into the brush, disappearing into the sleet. He was no longer Elias the security consultant. He was a ghost. 20 minutes later, the sound of engines cut through the silence of the forest. Elias lay prone on the roof of the cabin. He had climbed up using the rain gutter, wrapping himself in a waterproof tarp to break up his outline. He had his carbine rested on the chimney. Below, inside the cabin, Sarah watched through a crack in the shutters. Her heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. 2 vehicles appeared around the bend. They weren't the sedan or the van from before. These were black SUVs, modified for off-road use. They moved slowly, their lights off, navigating by night vision. They stopped at the edge of the clearing. Elias watched through his scope. 4 men exited the first vehicle. 4 from the second. 8 hostiles. They were professionals. They moved in a rolling T formation, covering their sectors. They wore body armor, helmets with night vision goggles, NVGs, and carried suppressed rifles. This wasn't a corporate cleanup crew. This was a paramilitary hit squad. One of the men, the leader, held a tablet. He was looking at the screen, then pointing at the rusted bulldozer. The Judas signal works, Elias thought. The leader signaled with a clenched fist. Hold. He spoke into a radio. Elias couldn't hear the words, but he could read the body language. The leader was suspicious. It was too quiet, too easy. This was the critical moment. If they sensed the trap, they would flank the cabin from the woods. Elias needed them to commit to the center. Elias reached into his pocket and pulled out a small stone. He threw it toward the bulldozer. Clang. The sound of rock hitting metal echoed in the clearing. The mercenaries snapped their weapons toward the sound. A noise meant movement. Movement meant a target. Contact front, someone whispered loud enough for the wind to carry. The leader made a cutting motion with his hand. Advance. 6 of the men moved toward the bulldozer, weapons raised, stepping carefully through the mud. 2 stayed back by the SUVs as rear guard. Elias waited. He controlled his breathing. Inhale. Exhale. Pause. The point man reached the bulldozer. He saw the dinosaur wedged in the engine block. He reached out to grab it. It's a toy, the man said, his voice confused. Boss, it's a... His foot snagged the fishing line. Hiss, pop. A road flare strapped to the bulldozer blade ignited. A blinding, sputtering red light erupted in the center of the clearing. For men wearing night vision goggles, a sudden flare is like staring into the sun. The intense light overloaded their sensitive optics. They were instantly blinded, tearing the goggles off their faces, stumbling back. Ambush, ambush. Elias squeezed the trigger. Crack, crack, crack. He didn't fire at the men. He fired at the engine block of the lead SUV. He wanted to strand them. The radiator exploded. He shifted aim. He fired at the tires of the second SUV. The clearing erupted in chaos. The mercenaries were blind, exposed, and under fire from an unknown location. They sprayed bullets wildly into the trees, wasting ammunition. Identify the shooter! Where is he? The leader screamed, ducking behind the bulldozer tracks. Elias shifted his position on the roof. He had the advantage, but he was outnumbered. He needed to demoralize them. This is Elias Thorne, he shouted, his voice booming from the rooftop. You are in a kill box. Drop your weapons and walk away, and you live. Advance, and you die. Silence fell over the clearing, save for the hissing of the flare. The leader, a man with a scar running down his jaw, peered over the bulldozer track. He wasn't panicked. He was calculating. Thorne, the leader shouted back. You know we can't leave. We have a schedule to keep. Give us the data drive and we leave the girl and the kid alone. There is no drive, Elias lied. I uploaded it to the cloud. It goes public in 2 hours unless I enter a code. It was a bluff, a classic leverage play. The leader laughed. It was a cold, dry sound. You're lying, Elias. We jammed the cellular spectrum 5 miles back. Nothing has gone to the cloud. You're holding the football and we're here to take it. The leader tapped his headset. Flank him. Team Bravo, move to the tree line. Burn the cabin. Elias cursed silently. They were disciplined, they weren't breaking, and now they were going to burn them out. He saw movement on the periphery. 3 men were breaking off, circling wide toward the back of the cabin, Sarah's blind spot. Elias couldn't cover both sides. He was one man. He keyed the small radio he had given Sarah. Sarah, he whispered, they are flanking left, coming toward the kitchen window. Do not open the window, just let them know you are there. Inside the cabin, Sarah heard the voice in her ear. She was trembling, holding the heavy pistol with both hands. Flanking left, she moved to the kitchen. She saw a shadow pass the window, then another. She remembered Elias's words, violence of action. She didn't wait for them to break in. She smashed the butt of the pistol against the glass, shattering a pane. She thrust the gun barrel out and fired blindly into the dirt. Bang! Bang! The recoil was stronger than she expected, jarring her arms. Outside, the flankers dove for cover. They hadn't expected armed resistance from inside. They thought the woman and child were cowering. "Target is armed," one of the flankers yelled. "Heavy resistance inside." Elias used the distraction. He popped up and fired 2 precise shots at the flankers, pinning them down behind a log pile. "Go back!" Elias roared. The battle had stalemated. The mercenaries were pinned in the mud. Elias was trapped on the roof. Sarah and the family were trapped inside. But time was not on Elias's side. He had limited ammo. They had a squad. Then the leader did something unexpected. He stood up, holstering his weapon. He walked out into the red light of the dying flare, his hands raised. "Thorn, cease fire." Elias kept his crosshairs on the man's chest. "Talk fast." "You're good," the leader called out, "but you're out of moves. We have an RPG in the truck. I didn't want to use it. Too much noise, too much mess. But if you don't come down in 10 seconds, I put a rocket through that front door." Elias felt a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. An RPG, rocket-propelled grenade, would turn the cabin into a splintered tomb. The ballistic vests, the mattresses, none of it would matter. 5 seconds, Thorn," the leader signaled to one of the men near the SUV, who hoisted a dark tube onto his shoulder. Elias looked down through the roof hatch he had used to climb up. He could see the top of Sarah's head. She was guarding her son. He had 1 card left to play, the most dangerous card in the deck. "Okay," Elias shouted, standing up slowly, his hands visible. "Don't shoot, I'm coming down." "Elias, no!" Sarah screamed from inside. "I'm coming out," Elias repeated. "Just me. Let them go." The leader smiled. "Come on out, hero. Let's make a deal." Elias slid down the roof and dropped to the muddy porch. He left his rifle on the roof. He held his hands up. He walked down the steps into the mud. The leader gestured for his men to move in. "Cuff him. Secure the cabin." As the men closed in, zip ties ready, Elias looked at the leader. "You forgot one thing about the Okoka principle," Elias said softly. "Yeah? What's that?" The leader sneered. "Obstacles," Elias said. "I told you the mud was deep." Elias stomped his foot. Not on the mud, but on a wooden board buried under the mud. A pressure plate. He hadn't just rigged flares. He had found the old logging camp's fuel reserve, a 500-gallon tank of diesel, buried and forgotten, with a rusted leaking valve he had opened 20 minutes ago. The ground they were standing on was saturated with diesel fuel, and in Elias's hand, hidden in his palm, was a Zippo lighter. "Burn," Elias whispered. He flicked the lighter and dropped it. Hollywood has taught us that fuel explodes. It teaches us that a dropped lighter results in an instantaneous cinematic fireball that hurls heroes through the air. Reality is far more terrifying. When Elias dropped the Zippo into the mud saturated with 500 gallons of leaked diesel, The world didn't explode. It inhaled. Diesel has a high flash point. It doesn't combust like gasoline. But Elias had saturated the dry pine needles, the dead grass, and the wooden planks of the porch. The lighter hit a patch of diesel-soaked kindling. Whoosh! A wall of orange flame erupted from the ground, not with a bang, but with the sound of a massive sheet being ripped in half. It wasn't an explosion. It was a rapid, expanding wave of superheated air. The sudden updraft sucked the oxygen out of the clearing. The mercenaries, who had been closing in on Elias, were thrown backward, not by a shockwave, but by the sheer primal instinct to recoil from heat that singed eyebrows instantly. "Back! Get back!" the leader screamed, shielding his face. The fire created an instant tactical barrier, a fire break, separating Elias from the capture team. But Elias was on the wrong side of the wall. He was outside the ring of fire with the mercenaries. Sarah and her family were inside the cabin, protected for the moment by the logs, but the heat was rising fast. Elias didn't waste the confusion. While the mercenaries were batting at their smoking gear, blinded by the sudden transition from darkness to blinding orange light, Elias moved. He didn't run away. He closed the distance. Principle of close quarters battle, CQB. Aggression neutralizes numbers. Elias tackled the man with the RPG. They hit the mud with a wet thud. The rocket launcher flew from the man's grip, skittering into the flames. The propellant in the rocket cooked off seconds later, spiraling the warhead harmlessly into the night sky, where it detonated in a white phosphorus airburst, illuminating the logging camp like high noon. The distraction was absolute. Elias rolled, coming up in a crouch. He was covered in mud, his face smeared with soot. He looked like a demon rising from the earth. The leader of the mercenary team, the man with the scar, had recovered. He pulled a combat knife from his vest. His rifle was jammed with mud. "You're dead, Thorn!" the leader roared, lunging forward. Elias didn't block. He stepped into the attack. In unarmed combat, most people pull away from a knife. This exposes the vital organs. Elias utilized a technique known as checking the limb. As the leader thrust the knife, Elias slammed his forearm into the man's bicep, stopping the momentum before the blade could gain speed. With his other hand, Elias struck the man's brachial plexus, a cluster of nerves in the neck. It was a stun strike. The leader gasped, his arm going numb. The knife dropped into the mud. Elias swept the man's legs, driving him into the dirt. He didn't kill him. He didn't need to. He rolled the man over and zip-tied his hands behind his back with a plastic restraint he pulled from his own pocket. "Stay down," Elias growled. The fire was roaring now, consuming the old machinery, climbing the trees. The remaining mercenaries were fleeing, scrambling toward their SUVs, their morale broken by the elemental fury of the trap. They were paid to fight men, not infernos. Elias turned to the cabin. The porch was beginning to smoke. "Sarah!" he screamed. "Code Sunrise, get out now!" The door of the cabin burst open. Sarah emerged, coughing, a wet towel wrapped around her face. She was carrying Leo. Her mother, Martha, was right behind her, clutching the family photo album, the only thing she had thought to save. "The stairs are burning!" Sarah yelled, staring at the wall of flames engulfing the front steps. "Jump!" Elias commanded. "I'll catch you." It was a 6-foot drop into the mud. Sarah didn't hesitate. She threw Leo first. Elias caught the boy, his muscles straining, and set him gently on the only patch of dry ground left. "Mom, go." Sarah pushed her mother. Martha jumped. She landed awkwardly, twisting her ankle, but she was alive. Then Sarah jumped. Elias caught her, swinging her away from the radiant heat. "The truck!" Sarah gasped. "The F-150 is blocked by the fire." Elias looked. She was right. His truck was on the other side of the firewall. There was no way to reach it without burning to death. They were stranded. "No," Elias said, his eyes scanning the chaos. "We take theirs." He pointed to the lead SUV, the one with the shattered radiator. Useless. He looked at the second SUV. It was still running, engine idling, driver door open where the mercenary had fled. "To the car, go!" They sprinted through the mud. The heat was intense, blistering their skin. The air tasted of diesel and pine resin. They piled into the black SUV. It was a high-tech fortress compared to the old Ford. Leather seats, satellite navigation, tactical radios. Elias jumped into the driver's seat. He locked the doors. "Everyone buckled?" "Just drive," Martha yelled from the back. Elias slammed the vehicle into gear. He had to drive through the edge of the fire to reach the road. "Heads down." He floored it. The SUV surged forward. Flames licked the windows. The temperature inside spiked. For 3 terrifying seconds, all they could see was orange. Then, they broke through. The SUV fishtailed onto the gravel road, speeding away from the inferno. Behind them, the logging camp was a beacon visible for miles. The remaining mercenaries were scattered in the woods, dealing with the local fire department and police who would inevitably be drawn to the blaze. Elias drove in silence for 10 minutes, putting distance between them and the kill zone. His hands gripped the steering wheel so tight his knuckles were white. "Elias," Sarah whispered from the passenger seat. She reached out and touched his arm. "We made it." Elias let out a breath he felt like he'd been holding since the diner. He slowed the vehicle down. "Not yet," he said. "We survived the night. Now we have to survive the morning." He pointed to the center console of the SUV. There was a ruggedized laptop mounted there, the mercenaries' field computer. "They were communicating with their command center," Elias said, "which means this computer is linked to the Aegis logistics network." He pulled the SUV over to the side of the dark road. "What are you doing?" Sarah asked. "Finishing it," Elias said. "I couldn't upload the data before because they jammed the signal. But this car has a dedicated satellite uplink." Elias opened the laptop. It was password protected. "Can you hack it?" Sarah asked. Elias shook his head. "I don't need to hack it. I have the admin key." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a USB drive. The data he had stolen from the warehouse. The data that started this whole mess. "This drive contains the manifest," Elias explained. "But it also contains a digital signature. If I plug this into their network, it acts like a virus. It doesn't destroy data, it broadcasts it." He inserted the drive. The screen flashed. A progress bar appeared. "Uploading to FBI Cyber Division, DHS, New York Times, secure drop. Once this hits 100%, Elias said, watching the bar crawl forward, "Aegis Logistics ceases to be a company and becomes a crime scene. The men who hired that hit squad will be too busy shredding documents to chase us." The bar hit 100%. "Done," Elias said. He yanked the drive out and crushed it in his hand. He looked at Sarah. Her face was smudged with soot, her hair wild, but her eyes were clear. She wasn't the tired waitress from the diner anymore. She was a survivor. "You did good, Sarah," Elias said softly. "You kept your head, you saved your family." "I had a good teacher," she replied. In the back seat, Leo was asleep, still clutching the dinosaur. Martha was staring out the window, watching the sun begin to crest over the mountains. "Sunrise," Martha whispered. "You said the code word was sunrise." Elias looked east. A thin line of gold was breaking the gray horizon. "Yeah," Elias said, putting the SUV back in gear. "It is." 3 weeks later. The scandal dominated the news cycle. Aegis Logistics had been raided by federal agents. The CEO and 3 board members were indicted on charges of international arms trafficking and conspiracy to commit murder. The dual-use chemical pipeline had been shut down. Elias sat on a park bench in downtown Seattle. He was wearing a new jacket, a different hat. He was back in condition yellow, relaxed, alert, invisible. He wasn't looking at the pigeons. He was watching the playground. Leo was on the swing set, laughing as he went higher and higher. Sarah was standing nearby, talking to another mom. But Elias noticed something different about Sarah. She wasn't staring at her phone. She was standing with her back to a tree, giving her a clear view of the entire park. Her head moved slowly, scanning the perimeter. When a man with a large backpack walked too close to the playground fence, her gaze locked onto him until he passed. She had adopted the baseline. She was living in condition yellow. Elias stood up. He wasn't going to approach them. It was too dangerous to maintain contact. His job was done. The threat was neutralized. He turned to leave. "Mr. Thorne?" He stopped. He didn't turn around immediately. He let the voice register. Sarah walked up behind him. She didn't hug him. She didn't make a scene. She stood next to him, looking at the playground. "I told you," Elias said quietly. "We shouldn't be seen together." "I know," Sarah said. I have something for you." She slipped an envelope into his jacket pocket. "It's not money," she said quickly. "I know you wouldn't take it. It's a letter from Leo and a gift certificate for the midnight grind. Lifetime supply of coffee." Elias cracked a rare smile. "Does the offer stand if I change my face again?" "I'd know you," Sarah said. She looked at him, her eyes fierce. "You can't hide from me anymore, Elias. I know what to look for." "What do you see?" "I see a man who thinks he's a machine but is actually the most human person I've ever met." She stepped back. "Thank you," she whispered. "For the lesson. For everything. Stay safe, Sarah." "I will," she said. "I'm always watching the door." She walked back to her son. Elias watched them for a moment longer. He saw Leo jump off the swing and run to his mom. Sarah crouched down, checking his shoes, but her eyes were still scanning the horizon. Elias adjusted his cap. He felt the weight of the envelope in his pocket. He walked away, merging into the crowd, becoming just another face in the stream of humanity. A gray man, once again. And that brings us to the end of Elias and Sarah's journey. But before you click away, let's break down the critical survival lessons from this story that could save your life. 1. The Cooper Color Code. Most people live in condition white, oblivious. Elias survived because he lived in condition yellow, relaxed awareness. You don't need to be paranoid, you just need to be present. Put the phone down, look at the people around you. Identify the exits. 2. The OODA loop. Observe, orient, decide, act. When the ambush happened at the diner, the mercenaries were still observing. Elias was already acting. In a crisis, speed is life. He who cycles through the OODA loop faster wins the engagement. 3. The baseline. You can't spot a threat if you don't know what normal looks like. Elias knew the waitress was stressed because it deviated from her baseline behavior. Pay attention to the norm so you can spot the anomaly. 4. Trust your gut. Sarah felt something was wrong with the men in the parking lot. She could have ignored it. Instead, she acted on it. Your intuition is a survival mechanism honed over millions of years. If a situation feels wrong, it is wrong. Don't rationalize it away. Leave. 5. Okoka. Observation, cover, obstacles, key terrain, avenues of approach. Whether you are parking your car or choosing a seat in a restaurant, think about the terrain. Where is the cover? Where is the exit? Don't back yourself into a corner. If you found value in this story, if it made you think differently about your own safety, please give this video a like and share it with someone you care about. Knowledge is the only weapon that weighs nothing to carry.